Hello and welcome back to Tombgallows. Last time, we butchered a whole bunch of goblins. This time, I really don't know what we're gonna do. Probably clean up all the goblins. Yeah, probably clean up all the goblins and deal with all their crap. And that's about it, probably. Pretty sure that's what we're gonna do. Of course, that also means that we have to sort of wait for our wait for our dwarves to actually do it. And I'm not 100% sure they're up to the task, considering our dwarves tend to not want to actually work. They tend to just want to sit and pray constantly. Like that's all they do, is sit around meditating. It's unfocused by unmet needs. I'll be honest, I'll be completely honest, one of the things I don't like that have been added to Dwarf Fortress is this. This works for Adventure Mode. It does not work for Fortress Mode, because the game does not allow things to happen in a way that makes sense. No human being can manage 200 dwarves worth of these needs. It just doesn't happen. And like things like this, you can't do anything about. Unfocused after a lack of abstract thinking. There is no chance that you're going to be able to do this. Same with unfocused, unable to be able to help anybody. These, what do these mean? What do, like how? Like, none of that makes any sense. And you couldn't... If we assumed that the not learning anything refers to reading, or the abstract thinking refers to doing, like, scholarly work, it doesn't work with not being able to practice a martial art. Does that make sense? Like, the only way to do that is if you're a military dwarf, but you can't be both. And things like distract after being unable to make merry. This is something that you, as the player, have no control over. That's something the game has to decide the dwarf should be doing. If that makes sense. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not 100% sure if, like, this doesn't work. As a gameplay mechanic. It just doesn't work. Because you don't have control over what all your dwarves are doing at any one given time. So they just sort of sit around. Why are they doing this? I feel like every... Yeah, toys are not allowed in here, so why are they grabbing toys? Is it because they're upstairs? That's the only thing I can think of. Like, like... Alright, why do we have a bunch of gold chests sitting around that I haven't used? But yeah, like, that gameplay mechanic doesn't work in adventure mode, or in fortress mode. It works in... adventure mode when it tells you like what your guy wants to do and what your guy needs to do. It doesn't work in fortress mode at all. And I don't know why it was added to fortress mode, but there's a lot of weird things that have been added that don't really work. I think one of the big problems, I love Dwarf Fortress because it's giant and sprawling and there's nothing like it. But I think one of the major problems with Dwarf Fortress is that it's a giant bug-filled mess, and the people who are developing the game are more interested in adding more features than they are when it comes to fixing current issues. Does that make sense? Like, there have been bugs that have go back like 5 years that they have not fixed and don't seem interested in fixing, and it's a problem. Like, the issue where two dwarves cannot take something out of the same bin at any one given time, or the fact that using manager orders creates recursive, never-ending problems. Like, they're just not fixing bugs. They're just adding more features that, in turn, cause more bugs. And so the game, over time, has become almost less playable. Like, there's more to do, but the game itself seems to be becoming less and less playable as time goes on. If that makes sense. I don't remember how many of these. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Alright, so 19 times 2 is 38. Yes, 38. So... we're looking for lead. I think we have enough. Alright, we'll get to smelting. But yeah, I think that's one of the big problems, is that, like, the game is fun, and there's a lot to do in it, and there's a lot of things with world building and everything else, but so much of the game is weighed down by bugs and things that should be fixable or should have been fixed a long time ago that are not fixed because the people behind the game either don't know how to fix them or don't want to. There's a lot of things that could be fixed that just aren't, and it doesn't make sense that they don't fix it unless they don't care about fixing it or they don't want to. Like, those are the only two options. Because there's zero reason why some of these almost very basic issues are not fixed after so many years. Like, why exactly can you not have two dwarves take something out of a bin at the same time? Because both of them are accessing it, but if you stick things like gems in bins, it will just say that all the gems in the bin don't exist or are not accessible because it can't handle work orders correctly. Or the fact that if you don't use 8 million like accessible programs, like either Dwarf Therapist or Dwarf Hack, then the game is unplayable. you can't play the game if you don't have something to manage labors, because there's no way to manage labors in the game itself. Well, there is, but it's completely unusable. So it doesn't work. And I think the people making the game have sort of become dependent on those things existing. If that makes sense. Like, how do I put this? Like, if Dwarf Hack just stopped updating, or like if Dwarf Therapist just never, they just stopped making Dwarf Therapist, the game would no longer, you wouldn't be able to play the game. You know, like if you removed auto labor, or if you removed what's another one that's used? Like if you were removing the tweaks that are used to keep the game from crashing FPS wise, you would not be able to play the game. Like, here's the weird thing about Dwarf Fortress. Like, I was having this conversation in the comments with somebody, but the background of Dwarf Fortress is a giant clusterfuck, because the game is trying to manage 8 billion things at once. In the old days of playing Dwarf Fortress, the rest of the world was static, and so the game didn't need to process all the things that happened in the background. So, all the other civilizations and everything else were static when you played the game, so nothing was developing. And then they released it so that the things that are happening in the background are... Why are you updating that? I forbid that. Yeah, it's forbidden. Why are you why are you... Unless there's... Oh, there's another one that just apparently the amulet's okay, but the amulet's okay, but they won't get rid of the other amulet. Okay, I don't know. But, like, in the old days... You know, we're just gonna, like, forbid this one and hope they never do anything with it again. Like, everything in, like, all the other civilizations never moved or changed or anything. And that saved a lot of space, but it was less interesting. Now, it all works. Like, it all happens in the background. All the civilizations change and move and develop and all that other stuff. But because of this, it requires way more processing power. So if you don't have a beefy computer, you basically can't play the game anymore, unless you're playing on very small worlds or your very early population worlds. If you're playing, the game, say, 250 years on a medium world, the game is trying to process the actions and behaviors and emotions and everything else of thousands and thousands and thousands of individual beings and animals and motivations, and it just becomes top heavy. Like, with the addition of rumors and the ability to, like, expeditions and the ability to change your identity or assume a false identity and things like that, and the fact that the NPCs all do that, what it's created is a situation where now it's now having to account for all those things. Like, the game just keeps adding things for the game to account for that the game is not set up to account for. The game just isn't made in the background enough, engine-wise, to account for all this shit. And I think that's the thing that's holds back this game, that holds back Dwarf Fortress, is the fact that it's only made by 2 people. Like, only 2 people make this game. And the problem with that is that the guys who are making the game might have a vision, but they don't have... they have the skills to make and implement all this stuff. They don't have the skills to optimize it. I think is the problem. Because they've made an amazing game, but the problem is that the game has gone so long without any optimization, any way to majorly fix the underlying problems that the game has. And I fail to... Like, there's so many ways that you would have to change core aspects of the game to the point where it would work, almost, if that makes sense. Like, what do we have? Why do you have reindeers and cows? Why do we have these? Like, part of the issue is, like, they have an idea of where they want to go and what they want to do, but they don't have the actual skill enough to do it in a way that it doesn't overburden the game. Like, every version of Dwarf Fortress adds things, and every version of Dwarf Fortress becomes less and less playable as a game. Because the actual, like, underlying functions of the game don't work, if that makes sense. Definitely need to assign more War Jaguars. I totally forgot that last time. Anyway, how did I put this? What's the best way to put this? Like, I think one of the weirdest things is that Dwarf Fortress has an adventure mode, which is great, except for the fact that for anyone else, having a adventure mode or having a fortress mode would be the entire game. If you were any other indie developer, alright, if you were any other indie developer who was managing and making a game, and you were like, okay, I'm going to sit down and make a game with all of these things in the game. If you were any other developer, having an adventure mode or having a fortress mode would be the entire game. That's all that would be in the game. Because you just simply wouldn't have the resources, the time, or the ability to handle all of the things that are going to occur when you expand the game beyond its initial scope, if that makes sense. Like, the underlying issue is if, like, let's say you, how do I put this? Like, so let's say you were making Fortress mode, and you were having to continue to add things to Fortress mode so it worked. Like, that was your whole thing. You want to make sure that the game is functional, but every time you add something to the game becomes less and less functional. So, you, like if you add something to Fortress mode, or you add something to Adventure mode, it causes issues in the other version. So, like, in Adventure mode, it's super good that the game progresses as you do. In Fortress mode, it slows everything down because the game is accounting for thousands and thousands of beings you will never encounter. Like, we're here in the bottom left-hand corner, or the left-hand corner. The chances of us ever encountering these goblins or elves up here is so minimal. Or, you know, encountering, like, the dwarves that are over here, or encountering the elves that are over here. The idea that you will encounter these things is very limited, and so accounting for the entire populations of all of these areas is insanity, really. Like, it's cool from a simulator perspective, but it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work at all from... Like, it doesn't work at all from a gameplay perspective, because there's just no way to handle it. There's no easy way to, like, actually deal with that, if that makes sense. Like, you might really want to do it, and it's cool, but it doesn't make the game work better, if that makes sense. Like, it's cool to be able to walk across the map and see all of this stuff, but the end result is one where everything functions worse than before, if that's any indication. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but it's one thing I'm thinking about as I was reading up on, like, their plans for the future, where they're going to introduce magic, and they're going to introduce, you know, actual gods, and they're going to introduce alternate realities and shit, and I'm going, that's all real cool from a simulation perspective, but how does any of this add to the game? Like, how does any of this make the game more playable? Because, okay, yeah, it's the game's free, but the game has been in development since 2006, and it's now 12 years later. So this game is 12 years in development by two people, and it's really impressive from a simulation perspective. But you can't help but sit around and going, you know, some of the design choices seem misplaced, almost. Like, if that makes sense, like, you look at it and you go, okay, why do we have so many random animals? Any other weird-ass random animals we're sitting on that we don't need? Why do we have... Don't need these animals. Why are they here? Who brought them and why? Like... That's not to say the game is good. The game has a lot of good aspects to it, and the good definitely overcomes the bad, but I sort of think that like 12 years in, the problems that have been in the game for a decade or more are either like you need to deal with them. Like you can't just expect them to go away as you continue to add more features. Because I kind of feel like maybe it's because I got burned on I've been burned on other games, or maybe it's because okay. Like, maybe I've been burned on other games. Maybe it's because we now live in hype culture, almost. Does that make sense? Like, we live in a culture now where everything is hyped up forever, and the concept of early access is sort of meant so that every game just sits in early access forever. So, like, in the old days, Dwarf Fortress was kind of a novelty because it was early access forever. It was made by 2 guys, and the fact that it was quote-unquote early access was sort of unique and different and almost a selling point where like the game would keep being developed forever, and that was kind of cool. But now every game does this, where like every game is early access forever, and the results are that it never pans out. Like, it never pans out because when you're in early access forever, you have no deadline, and so you just kind of keep working forever, and you hope that one day they will finish the game, but they almost never do. Most of the early access games end up as abandonware, and I can't help but think that maybe it's the cynicism talking, but I can't help but think that when Dwarf Fortress is quote-unquote finished, like when they add all of the features that they wanted to add to Dwarf Fortress that they've set out on their website, I can't help that everybody who's been playing this for so long is going to look at it and go, that's it? That's what we waited, that's what we all sat around waiting for, 12, 15 years, 20 years for you guys to produce. That makes sense? Like, it's impressive because 2 guys made it, but you can't help but wonder if, 2 guys had decided to use the, $70 grand a year that they're getting allotted to do this game, that if they if you invested it, or even, I hate to say kickstarting it, because kickstarting is these days is such a toss-up about whether or not somebody's actually going to complete anything that they say they want to do. But I can't help but think that if they added a few more people to just bug fix or complete basic aspects of the game again, I can't help but think that we would end up with a much better product, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. I might just be crazy. But I like to think that if we were sitting down and going, okay, we have a game where we want to push the limits, and you go, okay, and I'm not talking throwing $100 grand at the damn thing. I'm thinking about okay, we have a game that is barely functional, and every time we produce more content for it, the content isn't finished. Every time you fix one or add something, you break 50 other things that you shouldn't have broken, or that shouldn't be broken, I should say. There's no reason for them to be broken. They're just broken because there's no reason that so much of the game should not be there's zero reason in a game about fortress management that the management aspect has to be held. I think the closest to accomplishment would be if in any other game that you did, instead of doing the game yourself, you let third-party programs handle all of the major functions of the game. So, this is a game about fortress management. It's a game where you take populations of dwarves and you give them jobs to manage a fortress, right? So, in a way, it's sort of like RimWorld or like either RimWorld or like what's the other game? What's the other one called? Prison Architect or something like that. And you know, where you're where the entire appeal of the game is management. And imagine that, except all of the management aspects were in order to do any of the management parts, you had to get a third-party program to do that. That's Dwarf Fortress right now, in a lot of ways. Because you can't manage anything if you're not using, like, AutoLabor or Dwarf Therapist or, you know, DF Hack or anything else. Like, if you're not using these, the game isn't playable. I don't think, and like, if you wouldn't be okay with that with any other game, you know? Like, you would not be okay if you said, okay, this game's going to be in development for 12 years, and at the end of the 12 years, any of the basic functional parts of the game are going to be non-functional and are not going to be a part of the game, you know? Like, I don't feel like we would do that. I feel like that wouldn't fly for any other game, you know? And I'm not sure if it's because, you know, the game is free, but or maybe it's just because it's been out for so long and there is a good game underneath all of it. But I can't help but sit around and go, you know, I wouldn't accept that from any other game. Like, I love the game, I do. It's an amazing game, but I can't help but feel like maybe they lean on that a little too much. Because the basic, like, just go into the bug fixing, like they have an entire section of bug fixing to do, but you look at the bug fixing section and there's, like, outstanding bugs that have been acknowledged for, you know, huge amounts of time. And the last time a major bug happened where you had, like, the economy system, I don't know how many people actually remember way back when there was actual economy in Dwarf Fortress. Because there was one time in economy where you needed to mint coins and, you know, do things with that. And, like, you know, there was once an economy system, but when the economy system didn't work, they just removed it. And they left all the stuff that was about the economy in the game. So, like, coins are still in the game. They still function. The basic understanding of the economy is still in the game, but they haven't actually, like, improved anything or changed anything. It just sort of sits there on a kind of like a Battlefront 2. Oh, we're just going to remove this and not change anything after removing it and hoping that it goes away, kind of. Like, speaking of coins, there's another bug that's been in the game forever, where if you mint coins, like if you say, okay, I'm going to mint 10 coins, and you then melt those 10 coins down again, you get 11 bars of metal. So you can create more metal. Consider that for a moment. That's a bug that's been in the game forever, and it's still in the game, despite the fact everyone knows about the bug. You know, a bug in the game where essentially it breaks the laws of physics because of the way that they handle melting. So if you make, you know, 10 bars of metal worth of coins, and you melt them down, you get 11 bars of metal. Oh good, another forgotten beast to sit around in my caves and add more junk. Perfect, just what I needed. But yeah, I really do like Dwarf Fortress. I do. I know it sounds like I don't, but I love this game. It's just, it's gonna be a pain in the ass a bit. But I just realized I've been rambling for half an hour, and I need to cut this episode, so next time, hopefully I'll stop rambling and more interesting things will happen. We'll see if that actually works, though. See y'all later.